Welcome back to Stat 7 Sports. I am the contained Kunas, and this is the SEC Midseason Report. 10 games into the season, we have a three-way tie at the very top between Auburn, Kentucky, LSU. Auburn, I put, is above them because of tiebreakers, because Auburn beat Kentucky and LSU in 2 of their last 3 games. Then you have a three-way tie for 4th place, and if it was going into SEC tournament, this would be for that last double bye for whoever wins this tiebreaker. At this point, it would be Mississippi State. Then you have a three-way tie for 7th, all of them being 5-5. They're all going to be fighting for that mid-tier. Well, really, all of these teams, at least 4 to 10, have a decent shot of still getting that double bye. But mostly, it's going to be a top 3 team race for whoever's going to win the conference. You have Arkansas at 4-6, Missouri and Ole Miss tied at 3-7. Georgia's down at 2-8, and they may have the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft with Anthony Edwards. Makes you think back at LSU times with Ben Simmons, but let's not go back to that. And then Vanderbilt at 1-9, where their only win is against LSU 99-90 in a shootout if I ever saw one. So, yeah, 10 games through the season, three-way tie up top. LSU played its one time that it has to play Auburn. They have not played Kentucky yet. Kentucky has played Auburn, and they're not going to have to play Auburn again. So, all the rest of their schedule outside of that head-to-head matchup between Kentucky and LSU going to a tier down in the rest of the conference. So, with current seeding off of it, I went through the most recent bracketology from Joe Lunardi, and I do like to keep up with Andy Katz, all of his details off of it. But roughly what I got off of this, for the fact that we just got the current top 16 if the NCAA tournament started now. You only had one SEC team in that top 16, and that was Auburn, but they were at a 4 seed. But for the rest of the conference, there is potential for 6 teams at the moment. Like, as I said, Auburn's currently pushed as a 4 seed. Then you have Kentucky and LSU with both 5s. LSU might dip down a little more depending on the bracket because of the last 2 losses. I'm surprised they didn't drop them a little more for the fact that they lost to Vandy, but they're not really going to penalize them too much for a 1-point overtime road loss to Auburn, who is a top 15 net team. If you want to know more on that, I'll make out a video very shortly in the next couple days explaining the whole net rankings over what it used to be with the RPI. It's roughly based off of it to determine how all the seeding works. It's not only on that net rating. It's also partially on eye test and a few other details I'll go over in another video. But currently, Auburn's considered a 4 seed. Most experts put Kentucky and LSU as 5 seeds. LSU at some with 6. Arkansas's a 9 as probably the biggest surprise of teams that could make the NCAA tournament. And Florida at 11, who's probably the biggest disappointment. Because going into the season, they were ranked as a top 10, if not top 5 team in the entire NCAA basketball. And then you also have Mississippi State as an 11 seed, who is probably the biggest team size-wise in the SEC, even though they're not the best rebounding team, surprisingly. Where Auburn, LSU, and State is up there, but Auburn actually has the top rebounding stat in the league. So, most likely it's going to be a 3-team race to whoever's going to win the conference. Going through the remaining parts of the schedule, you have Auburn, who has, as I was saying, they haven't played their hardest they played most of the hardest part of the schedule in the earlier part, but it doesn't mean they won't have some challenging games coming up. As to end the rest of the month of February, you have one game. You got 3 home games, one against Bama. My bad. 2 home games, 2 road games. That's a typo. 1 home game against Bama, 2 road games against Missouri and Georgia. They're both at the lower part of the league, and Tennessee at a home game. So I could see Auburn going very likely to go 4-0 off of this. If there's one of these games that could be a trap game on it, it would be that Tennessee game at the very end, because I watched them in that Kentucky game yesterday, and they are one of the most athletic teams in the SEC, with a very strong shooting guard with Jordan Bowden, with Viscasi, him kind of coming on his own since he really just came in at the beginning of the SEC play and is only starting to get his feet wet for all of what the pace of the SEC is going to be, and he's been solid. So I like that potential for Auburn to end up losing that. For the latter half of that, these 8 games left, okay, you get him playing at Kentucky. So that's going to be a rematch of earlier in the year. But then you have Ole Miss right before. You got A&M, and you got another game at Tennessee. So I would predict that Auburn would end up at least splitting those Tennessee games, and I think Kentucky might get payback for the loss they had earlier. But if nothing else off of it, they would go 14-4, and at that point, more than likely would have a good shot of winning the conference, if not at least having a top 2 seed. Then you have the team that's lost the last 2 games, who was the last undefeated team with the LSU Tigers. Very balanced scoring with 5 players, all their starting lineup in double digits, but a very limited bench at the moment. They'll normally only play 7 to 8 players. Once Charles Manning gets off his ankle injury, that will be pushed to a consistent 8 because Marshall Graves will go back on the bench. He won't really be played much. But they really kind of coasted off of a meek beginning of the SEC schedule, having close wins against Alabama, buzzer beater against Mississippi State, comfortable win against Ole Miss, comfortable win against Tennessee, but a lot of the other ones outside of the last 2 with Tennessee, with Vanderbilt and Auburn both coming in losses. Every other one of these games were nailed biters to the very end. They had like a 7-game stretch where every one of their games were within 5 points, that they won every one of them. Now you get over the first 4, Missouri, at Alabama, Kentucky, at home, and South Carolina. Now South Carolina is a very physical team, so that could be a trap game on it, especially after playing Kentucky at home, where the hype of that's going to be way up. Missouri, they should be able to take care of. Alabama is going to be a tricky one. So I'd say very likely you get like a 3-1 in that first stretch. Then you have to go back to Florida, who they beat on the home court on a last second. There was a layup that Florida had on inbound pass with half a second left that they disallowed, saying it got off after the clock went 0. And LSU escaped with a 2-point victory. Then A&M, who they've already beaten in College Station, at Arkansas, who they already beat at home, which that could be a sneaky dark horse to actually do really well in the SEC tournament, especially whenever Isaiah Joe comes back for an injury. And then Georgia at the end of the season to cap it off. So with this one, there's a pretty decent shot that they're going to lose at least 2 of these games as well. And they could have another game that could work with the Vanderbilt stinker. Or it could also be that they go on a bit of a tailspin from losing the last 2 games, because you thought after the Vanderbilt game they would get themselves together and be able to have a good performance against Auburn, which was actually a good game, which is a quality game, being 91-90 in overtime. But just like a bunch of their previous, the first half of the SEC season, they gave up a double-digit lead that they had at halftime, and it went into overtime. Now, they did persevere from a near catastrophic issue at the end of the second half, where they end up going down by 7 with $1:20 left, and they still were able to come back and tie that up. But if they keep doing this towards the latter part of the year, they could end up getting, they're going to be above 500 in SEC play, but they could end up being towards the lower part of the NCAA tournament. All 3 of these top teams are pretty much locks unless a full late season collapse. So they're going to at least have those 3 in. So I would say you're going to get either 2 or 3 losses with this schedule off of it, which is going to put them either at 2nd or 3rd in the SEC. with 2 of the losses being between Kentucky, Florida, and I'm going to say Arkansas, and possibly a split between Arkansas and Alabama. Then you have Kentucky, the blue blood of the SEC, that always brings forth that the grandiose hype where every year it's win a national championship or bust. So, I'm making way too many typos. So, that would actually be interesting if Vanderbilt played, if it was a home game for Vanderbilt in Baton Rouge. But, so Kentucky has, in their last 8 games, at Vandy, home against Ole Miss, at LSU, at Florida, home against Florida, then A&M, Auburn, Tennessee, and Florida again. So you get Florida twice on it. There's potential to split on that, but I actually think Kentucky will probably sweep both of those, because Florida and Kentucky have gone through as much adversity as any teams in the SEC, but this is one of the more experienced Kentucky teams of the whole John Calipari era, from all the way back to whenever Tubby Smith was the coach, when they were still consistently top of the food chain of the conference and in the NCAA. So, they're going to beat, Kentucky's going to beat Vandy, Kentucky's going to beat Ole Miss. It's going to be a 50-50 with LSU in the Maravich Center. The Florida ones, I see them being able to sweep those. They'll beat A&M. They'll beat Tennessee, because they beat Tennessee on the road, and I see them getting back at Auburn, against Auburn. So really, there's potential for three losses on the schedule, between one against Florida, getting another loss against Auburn, and the loss against LSU. That's going to be a 50-50 game. Both of the Tiger matchups are going to be 50-50 games for it. Home field advantage could end up being a factor on it. The Florida matchups, they're always been the rivalry games in the SEC. So I actually think Kentucky has the most difficult schedule out of all 3 SEC teams left, because I could see Auburn coasting through the rest of it, where Kentucky's the only real test left. LSU is kind of, actually, it's pretty much, the schedule's kind of going pretty average on both ends. There's no real difficulty spike from one half of the season or to the other. But yeah, there's potential for 2 more losses. There's a good chance for 1 or 2 more losses for Auburn. I'd say 2 or 3 more losses. 1 to 2 more losses for LSU. Probably 2. And then Kentucky is probably potentially 2 or 3 more losses. So Auburn is probably going to win this division, win the conference, and then LSU, Kentucky will be the 2-3 matchups to where if they win in their double eliminations on the SEC tournament, they'll match up against each other. So you'll very likely get a rematch of the February 18th matchup that comes within a little over a week from now. So really with the rest of the schedule, it's very likely that you're going to get at least 5 SEC teams into the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State could be a 6th, or you get a sleeper with like a Tennessee or an Arkansas, where those could potentially sneak in. But with that being said, the rest of the season is going to be fun. I'll give a SEC tournament reaction whenever that comes up. I'll come up with another video in the next couple of days explaining all the net rankings, from the RPI rankings that it used to be between a couple of years. And with that being said, please, if you like this video, like, subscribe on it, and please let anyone else know about it. I'm doing any sort of sports content. Usually what's going to be current at the time, which is going to be college basketball. I'll be doing some NBA coverage whenever the All-Star game comes up. I'll do a bit of a recap on the first half of the season. College baseball is coming up this coming Friday, so I will do a LSU Tigers preview and a little bit of information on the SEC baseball. And after that, it's going to be a Major League Baseball preview. I'll do a little bit, probably going to stay away from the whole Houston Astros controversy. I'm not going to put my opinions in on that. And then after then, we'll just see how it goes. I'll do a bit on the NFL draft. I'll have a specific video on LSU players going in the draft, other SC players of note that is of interest. I'll do like a preview NFL draft. Whoever's going to be in the first round, my projections off of it, based off of need or position base. But yeah, let anyone know on it. I do enjoy doing this. I want to be able to spread this out to more people. I want to be able to end up making more edits, making it more interesting for any of the viewers. But with that being said, I'm the Detained Kunas. This is Stat 7 Sports, and I'll see y'all next time.